happening, or we're seeing variations, like, right, those blinds could be like solid plastic, or they could be semi-translucent plastic. Let's just look at MIA material X, and we'll just look at it out of the box right now. So that's not good. I need to have, I'm going to turn physical sun and sky on because it's easy. This is default. This is a default mental ray render without a lot, with just physical sun and sky on, some anti-aliasing, and the default, it's got, right, a specular highlight, it's reflective. I've got final gather going on. Remember, I can turn on ambient occlusion on the texture. See how much, what difference that does. And you know what? I want to get into an easier rendering view, and I'm going to go over here, right click, Hypershade Render Perspective. There it is. So here's my bot, right? Here's my camera. Here's what I get. Save it, render it. I'm going to turn this off, see what I get. Because the ambient occlusion is where objects touch. There's the difference. Woo! So turning this ambient occlusion feature on does change the render slightly. It just makes it seem like it's touching the object a little better. Ambient occlusion is really popular. The question is, where does your pipe... You've heard the term pipeline? Yeah? Yes. Have you ever heard that? Who has not heard this term? Paul Torres. I've heard it. Okay. What it means is, it's basically the combination of people and software to form an assembly line for construction, right? Like, you know, y'all have seen an assembly line, yeah? And people put a car together, manufacturers will put an assembly line. So at a company like DreamWorks or Pixar or whatever, each one of those companies has their own custom pipeline. That's what the company is its pipeline. It's the software and people. An order comes in and the manager looks at it and is like, oh, we're going to need to do this, that, and the other to make this happen. You on your own need to make pipelines that work for you, and that's kind of what I have. It's just like, I know how to work Maya relatively well, and I can just make it do what I want within reason. Sometimes I get caught up in things, but there's a point to this. But so one thing you could do is experiment with these MIA material X's. You can experiment inside. I'd rather you do it in the inside that bedroom. But like, there can be times where I've done this a lot because when I'm teaching these classes, where I just want to explore what these materials are doing, do experiments where I turn one off and one on, and like compare and contrast. I'm also gonna, on this ground plane, I'm gonna assign a new material, and that material is gonna be an MIAX material that I'm gonna set its preset to matte finish. I'm also gonna, on that matte material, I'm gonna set its ambient occlusion. So I have two, like, let's do 1 to 1 and save it. All I really am getting, like basically right here, this is the main difference. It's subtle, but it will, those subtle interplays will change how this stuff behaves. Let's take this sphere, duplicate it, move it over. I'll assign a new material. Go to Presets, Chrome, Replace. I'm going to keep doing this and just get all these presets out. So I'm going to go Duplicate. This one will get a new material. MIA Material X, Presets, Copper. Now I have these. Let's take a quick render. On these, also, I think I want ambient occlusion on all these. I've decided for whatever reason, today everything gets ambient occlusion turned on. Now, I have at least 10 ray trace passes happening. So if this sphere is going to go boop, 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 because they're reflective. If I do not have enough ray tracing passes, I'll show you what happens. Over here under ray tracing, I'm going to turn this down to 1, 1, 1. I'm going to render this again like so. So notice that the reflection into reflection into reflection has stopped right there. Do you see right here? Let's get closer. Exploring really close. Save it. Right? The objects reflect into each other. But this copper, I think I could, it's got reflection blur on it, which takes a while. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to reflections, and I'm now going to turn this up to 10 by 10 by 20. Save this, and now hit render. And you'll see that now the spheres reflect into each other like a ever-increasing mirror until it stops again. Now notice that the copper sphere has grittiness. If you look really close, I see that it is gritty, and maybe I want it to be really smooth. I'm going back to the manual because I saw something in there today that made me think about an attribute. Basically, I'm going to look for the attribute to smooth it out. Help, my help. Mental Ray Manual. What's up, Chris? Did you have a question?
I just wanted to see it close.
The majesty. It was the majesty of the reflection. It was amazing. Just like, that is an amazing reflection. Here's something to think about. This is and we should probably get to this in a minute. Let's go plus in because we're on that copper. I was looking for something else, but this is called anisotropy, or anisotropic, or anisotropy. Maybe mispronouncing it. But metal has my understanding of metal is it's a crystal. Could be wrong on that. You can melt it and it'll reform into another thing. But also, if the metal was machined, there might be grooves or micro grooves in the metal. Or let's say someone smashed in the side of a metal dumpster or whatever, and it scrapes the metal. There'll be fine grooves. And those grooves will reflect the light and also change the highlights and their shape. And so this is anisotropic with 0 values. And here is anisotropic with textured values. And something that was popular 15 years ago and is not as popular anymore, but was super popular then, was people would build a mall, and either at the food court or in the elevators, and in Pasadena it's still in the elevators, they would put either aluminum or steel on the inside of the elevator. Then they'll take a drill with a grinder on it and grind the metal. And it's called brushed aluminum or brushed steel. And so when they're doing that, those grooves are happening in the metal, and the light will play on it really funky when the light moves around. Also, maybe on the edge of a knife that's been polished in a certain way, right? That's an anisotropic behavior of highlights, and that is something that occurs in metal. Might occur in other things too, but it definitely occurs in metal. Also, there's little values. You got to read that. You would never know this. But here it says anisotropic channel can also have special values. -1, the base rotation follows the local object coordinate system. -2, the base rotation follows the bump basis vectors. -3, the base rotation follows the surface derivations. Right? So there's a whole brushed metal on here to get better results. And here they talk about, how they think you should implement ambient occlusion. There's one blog that's really good on this. And when I first got here, I guess because of the name of it, they wouldn't let me log into it, but now it's easy to. But Master Zap, which was this guy's screen name. But he worked for Mental Ray for a long time. So I think Master Zap might have invented MIA materials. There used to be the Los Angeles Mental Ray User Group, and I think they no longer exist, nor does their website. Yeah, they're gone. And also there was a website called mymentalray.com, and they seem to be gone too. And so this guy's website, you got to hunt through it. But there are, from starting in 2006 to 2013, he made the best Mental Ray posts around because he worked for Mental Ray. All right. And there's another, have y'all seen the area.com? Do you know who the area is? Okay, the area is Autodesk. You know how there's like Creative Crash and CG Society and all that? The area is Autodesk. It's Autodesk internal site to like promote themselves. Like there's tutorials and there's stuff on here, but learning, they have Autodesk master classes, which most people don't really look at, and these are rad. So some of them are just garbage, but like, and some of them do not apply to Maya. But there is some pretty advanced ones, and I'm pretty sure Master Zaps was one of the first. Here it was, giant robots using mental ray shaders to integrate CG elements into real shots. So here's his whole super long class. Right? So this was just a site that I thought had, this guy has really good mental ray information when you're getting lost. Digital Tutors is another site, but this guy worked for mental ray. So now what I was trying to find before I went on my little tangent was architectural library. I'm trying to smooth reflections. There it is. So here, interpolation. The number of samples, the resolution of this grid is set by a grid density parameter. However, interpolation can, since low resolution, it can lose details. So I need to find this textures, and it's this one, the pre-built chrome. So here's reflection, glossiness, advanced reflection, anisotropy, interpolation, interpolate reflection. So this copper has sampling artifacts, and I'm going to try and follow this PDF, looking up 2 points center, looking up 4 points right. All right, so I'm going to say I want 4. So here they're trying to make like reflections closer, and they're talking about how they can control this, but right now I'm going to go over here. Reflections 4. And I'm going to hit render. Grazie. Still a little. Oh, I see. I'm going to have to do the same thing on the Chrome. Interpolation. I hit escape. I'm also going to go here to blurred reflection limit, and I'm going to hit 4 and 4. Let's do this. This should smooth it out, I think. The problem is this increase, again, what do you think it's going to do? It's going to increase your render time. It is going slow. So unless you need blurred reflections, do not do it. But if you need them, it's just still a little rough. I'm going to go over here to this chrome one. Turn its interpolation I'm also going to turn the copper up even higher. Samples, 6. Because it's taking a reflection sample into another reflection sample into another reflection sample into another reflection sample. Right. Before we back out of this too much, let's make another pre-built. Duplicate this. I'll assign a new material. Again, MIA material X passes. Presets, and I'm going to use satined metal, which has anisotropic behavior on it. And what else I'm going to do to it? I wanted ambient occlusion on it. Use ambient occlusion. We'll just see it in relationship to these other ones. Save, render. Notice the highlight on top. It's shaped. It's meant to be like it's anisotropic already. But this looks more like aluminum, or a starting point for aluminum or steel, than this chrome, right? Chrome is electroplate. You know what electroplate is? Anyone ever heard the term? Yeah, like there's a material, basically, like this material, if you like a chrome bumper, sometimes traditionally they would have like some sort of cheap metal or gold plating, electroplating. They would coat it in a bath of some sort of substance. But the electricity is going through the material, and the material bonds to it through electricity. And so to get really smooth chroming, there are companies that will chrome, and there's all sorts of companies out there that will create different finishes onto objects. Like there's powder coating, there's maybe covering things in ceramic. There's a whole bunch of different ways to go about it. The one way is, like, people don't just go out and like dig chrome spheres out of the earth. They're like taking a shape, usually of a cheaper metal, and putting another metal. Like the gold-plated chains, people would have gold-plated chains. So they'd have a cheap chain, cheaper metal. Then they'd electrostatically put a gold-like metal, was it gold, onto the chain. And then some people were having reactions, and they get green around their neck or whatever, cheap gold. Real gold shouldn't yellow like that, So, but as a 3D artist, how things are made, like, does anyone ever see that show, like How Things Are Made, or right? But those shows are cool because you're like, oh man, that's how they do it. Because how materials behave and reflect light is important to a 3D artist, because you need to make the light, you need to make materials. Because just sculpting the object is one part of the battle. Then you got to texture it, then you got to light it, then you got to render it. Maybe not, and sometimes the orders will change. I'm going to go up here and look for, let's do galvanized metal texture. So there's a process called galvanization, which I don't know what it means. I knew better on chrome. But galvanization, I don't know, I see more plastic trash cans now. Like all the trash cans in my neighborhood are plastic. But when I was a kid, all the trash cans in my neighborhood were galvanized aluminum. Like yeah, or Stomp or something. Yeah. I remember when Blue Man Group wasn't famous, and they were just weird art guys before they were like one of the, and this is a tangent, they were like a fine art, performance art, weird freakiness, and they were able to translate that into big money, which was pretty amazing to see. All right, here's a metal texture. Here's someone shot a galvanized aluminum texture right here. And I'm going to take that, and I'm going to try and make from the satin metal maybe a galvanized aluminum. So I'm going to copy the image, go to Photoshop, and then we'll be done for today. But by experimenting with maps, you can find out all sorts of different ways to do things. We're going to have some homework where we do digital tutors coming up, because they know that some of the information that I want to show you in a little better way. So that's not going to happen this week, and that'll probably happen next. But like, if you're going to make an iceberg, if you watch like Discovery Channel and you want to make a model of an iceberg, the iceberg's not just the outer layer. There's multiple interior layers with light bouncing off things. So you'd have to sculpt out the things. Or like, let's say you wanted to make geological features that weren't just rock. Like maybe it's a geode, and like you see a quartz crystal, and then you look inside the quartz crystal and you see objects in there. So to model that shape, you would have to have not just the outer shape, but interior shapes, and then different textures applied there. So maybe the outer crystal's got one texture, but the different crystals on the inside would have different textures. Maybe you'd have flecks on different shapes that are gold, that are embedded in the crystal, Or maybe they're fool's gold or some other type of gold. You know? Or Chris Carlin, what if you had cracked ice cubes? You know, like the ice has caused the ice cube to, the heat of the whiskey has caused the ice cube to shatter. And so now there's planes of fracturing going through the cube. Well, you'd have to model those cracks and put the texture. Yeah, I mean, like, there's a tutorial on Digital Tutors, and they do an iceberg texture. But like, people have to think about that sort of stuff, and like that's on a show. People would probably refer to that as look dev or look development, right? Somebody would sit around and just like make textures and figure out how are we going to make the icebergs look like icebergs. Or on a show like Surf's Up, they spent like 6 months plus working on the wave technology. And the guy who came up with the wave technology was my particles teacher, or one of the guys. It was him but he was one of the main people. And he was complaining to me. He was just like, I was like, well, do you do Houdini now? Because he was a Maya guy. And he's like, eh. He's like, I just figured it out in Maya, and then we translated it into Houdini. He's like, apparently Zoic does all their effects in Maya. Zoic and Zoic, it was considered a good place to get your start at. Like if you were gonna go into, so I'm just gonna, let me cut this down. This I'm talking too much. So let's go to the image size. Filter, other. Oh, this is going to be really easy. So, no, it's not. So I want to get rid of these. Really, it's easier to get rid of this stuff. Here, I'm going to be lazy. So when I get this huge drift like this, sometimes I'll just reuse stuff. Sometimes it's easier to throw away to get a smoother, seamless result. Also, another problem with this, when I put it on a sphere, the poles will be all screwed up. The poles of the UV will have pinching at the tip of the poles. And there's a way to do it manually with Photoshop, but I'm going to just do it without it right now. Save as. I make this a TIFF. Where did I save all these? Oh, good. They're in source images. So what I want to do is put the galvanized into some anisotropic parameters. So I'm going to go back to my architectural library. I want anisotropic, and I passed it. There it is. So here's anisotropic for an 8. Anisotropic rotation is where I want it to be. I'll make a file texture for that. And I'm going to put it into galvanized. We'll see what happened. So I had it like this. And I got almost no change. which is not good. Let's try it at 10. That's crazy. It's a little much. Let me see what happens when I put it into the bump. That was interesting. I don't know how much I like it, but there is my bump. Getting me variation. Probably too much variation. Let's get nice and close. See how this looks. Save it. Too shiny. Like I need to turn the shininess of this all down, but I want this to be this is just like, looks like chrome again. But sometimes getting the parameter to work and then adjusting it down is the way to go. Light bump. Boop. So now I just got a little bit of bump, but it's creating a lot of variation around there. Still way too shiny. And I think I turned the anisotropic up like so high that it's ridiculous. So here I'm adjusting with the channels. I just want to see what the variants look like. Okay, that totally blew apart. It did not like this Fresnel reflection. Try that one. -1. So this playing with textures by themselves and finding out how they work, you're going to have an exercise of this coming up. But I want you to do your your rooms this weekend. And I don't want you to focus on anything but getting that room done. So it's super here's reflection, and it's really glossy. I'll keep I'm going to turn this down. Reflectivity I'm going to turn down, and the glossiness I'll turn down. Let's see how that works. So look, I turned the reflectivity down and the glossiness down. And now it's starting to look more like aluminum to me. Right? Super glossy. And I'm going to turn the roughness up. See what happens. It's now rougher. Cool. I like the little bit of the roughness. I'm looking at my soda can over here. I don't think it should be that reflective. I think I'm going to turn the reflectivity way down. Okay, I think I should turn the reflectivity back up a little bit. Take the roughness out. Turn the glossiness way up. Let's see how that works. Too glossy. Glossiness back down. Reflectivity up just a little bit. Advanced reflection. Don't care. Interpolation. Interpolate reflection. Fine. Render. I like that a little better. I think. It seems more, I mean, like I'm looking at my can over here, and I believe it a lot more. Like that could be like an aluminum. It's dull. Now another thing that I could maybe I could take that galvanized, let me graph that. So I have this, and I'll go to graph material, there we go. And then I'll take this file, that's the bump. Maybe I'll drive that into default. See how that looks. Because I have a texture color going into it. Look at that. Kind of nice. Right, I would buy it, like, you know, like. So I've got variation in color. Could also try, like, what happens if I, it's going through, let me hit escape. Could also take this, and this is just me experimenting, right? Duplicate the connections to network. I'll take this and drive it into reflectivity. And then I'll see how that works. And I'm liking that, right? I'm like, some things are shinier than others. Some things are more reflective than others. There's just all these variations going on in that material. This seems definitely more like a galvanized aluminum. It could seem like another sort of metal, industrial metal. Earlier I had something that seemed very much like the top of my can right here, like looking at it. It's not very galvanized, but I see streaks all over this can. You won't see this in the video, but I'm holding it up. I'm holding up a can of Monster, and look at if I look at the bottom, I see all sorts of grit and dirt and gnarliness from where someone spilled some, you know, it's just, all those can take into account. One of the big problem with this stuff is one of the big problems is it's always too clean. It's too clean. So maybe I go look for a dirty texture. Dirty metal, dirty scratched metal texture. Sometimes you can just find, like, here's one, boom, there we go. Here's some other ones. This is 1024, seamless pixels. Why not? So I'm going to take this one, copy image, go to Photoshop, new. No, I didn't copy it. It didn't work. Photoshop, new, paste, there it is, save as, scratched, metal. Discard the layers, and we're good to go. Let's try putting this into various components. Why don't we try mapping. I'm going to map the roughness with my scratched metal texture. Here's what I had. Here's what I have now. Let's see what happened. Not much. Right. Some areas became rougher and less shiny, but I don't see a radical difference. But by just piping in some simple maps into some choice attributes, you can get radically different results. Right? This is starting with my pre-build. I'm going to try putting this into the bump. And I'll get I should get a totally different texture. Save that. Render. This looks like crumpled aluminum. Don't you think? Maybe with more displacement it'd be even better, crumpled aluminum. But right, it's dull. I don't see a lot of reflections coming off, popping off it all crazy. Sweet. So, where have we gone from? Right? We've like look at how much this material is changing by just some subtle attributes. So here's like a cool galvanized aluminum. There is a kind of crinkled foil. Let's stop. 7:30. Let's go get dinner.